Hi, I'm Joss Whedon, executive producer, writer, director guy who made this episode Restless, which I wanted to do a commentary on because it's different than anything else I had ever done before or have ever done since. And I thought it might be fun to go through the whole thing since it is a sequence of dreams and sort of talk about what the more literal meanings of all the sort of vague dream images were to me and the process of making them, what that was all about.
Are you sure you'll be
So we
alright?
come in after the big climax. The big two-part climax took place this year, unlike the years before, in episodes 20 and 21. And a lot of people commented on that. They didn't understand why we didn't finish with the big wow explosion finish. But because we had done that twice in a row, we really felt like it would be nice to do something very, very different. And I thought a nice coda to this season, which had been a very anarchic and sort of upheaval-y season, and yes, I know upheaval-y isn't a word, for all the characters, would be to just do a piece that commented on all of the four main characters that we'd grown to know and love, and where they were in their lives and what they felt about things and each other. And so we built the structure based on the idea of dreams, one dream per act, beginning with Willow, then Xander, Giles, and finally Buffy, and the running thread in all of them being that they would be attacked by the spirit of the first slayer, the primitive, who would be sort of killing them in their dreams one by one until Buffy had the sort of strength and spirit to make her go away. Much like Freddy Krueger in the first Freddy Krueger, now that I think of it.
Did you get anything less Heart of Darknessy?
Apocalypse Now is a gay romp. It's a feel-good movie of whatever year it was.
What else?
Don't worry. Got plenty of chicken.
This was, for me, a great big departure because everything I've done has been very, very carefully structured. Every story, every beat of every story is structured before I write a word. I can't write unless I know exactly where I'm going, and although I did have a general idea of where I was going, and here they all sleep, and we go to what would be the commercial. In this particular instance, I couldn't know where I was going. I literally had to just let it flow and make sure the images were true to the characters, true to the flow of the energy of the narrative, so that there was some momentum. Things become creepier as we go along. But basically, I just had to free associate in every act, which for me was very liberating. I knew that a lot of people would be alienated by it and not get it, quite frankly, or not want it if they did get it. But to me, it was a great exercise, as great an exercise as Hush, in learning about how to write and what it means.
You're not worried?
Here they talk about the kitty and finding out its real name. This scene is largely about their intimacy and trust and the safe place in her life that is her relationship with Tara. Somebody actually pointed out to me something that I hadn't noticed, which is that they talk about letting something tell you its name, and then later on Riley talks about naming things, specifically the idea of the more feminine and masculine versions of how to experience the world, in the feminine version of letting it come to you, and in the masculine version of sort of conquering it and codifying it yourself. That was actually somebody on the internet who mentioned that. This, apart from being, I think, one of the most sensual images we've ever done, is just something that seemed very dreamlike to me, that she would be writing out what is a paper on Tara's back. That, by the way, is a love poem by Sappho, which was researched by Todd McIntosh, our makeup guy, who's a genius who's been with us forever, and he went the full 9 yards and painted it on exactly. The desert she's looking out into is real. We moved a wall into the desert to get our first glimpse of the primitive. And of course, the big terrifying kitty shot. Then we're in school, again, a dreamlike thing. The idea of, oh, late for class, everything's just moving sort of dreamlike, everything's sort of just a little bit off. And of course, Oz is there. He had left the show for a while. Came back just for this one episode.
Sometimes I think about two women doing a spell, and then I do a spell by myself.
That joke of Xander's is a bit of a cheat, truthfully, since it's not really her experience. It just made me laugh when he said it, so I kept it in. But actually, we sort of lose her for that moment, which is not very dreamlike. This is, of course, the classic actor's nightmare, and Willow had already had a dream about being in a play in in season 1, episode 10, Nightmares, where she had to perform Madame Butterfly. So she is more open now and taking drama class, or considering the idea of taking it, but it sort of vaguely terrifies her, and this comes out in it. And the idea of role-playing, and that's, let's face it, how many of us see Riley. Mark was never better and never had more fun than when he got to be Cowboy Guy. Both he and Sarah look amazing and act amazing in these guises. But the whole point being, of course, that Willow is feeling like she's wearing a disguise, like she isn't telling anyone her true name, like people will find out about her. And the mislead is that what she's talking about is her sexuality, but in fact what she's talking about is the fact that she still considers herself to be, well, a big nerd, which we will see later on.
All right, everyone, pay attention. In just a few moments,
Giles's overly directory speech, the sort of Ponzi authority figure, was enormous fun.
That means we have to be perfect. Now stay in character, remember your lines, and energy.
And here, of course, we introduce the primitive, which just sort of half seen and half understood becomes a figure of great menace. And the other classic dreamlike thing of everybody's priorities are completely not your own, and when you have a sense of dread that nobody else is paying attention to them.
Props? Yes. It's all about subterfuge. That's very annoying. Now, go on out there, lie like dogs, and have a wonderful time. If we can stay in focus, keep our heads, and if Willow can stop stepping on everyone's cues, I know this will be the best production of Death of a Salesman we've ever done. Stop it. Good luck, everyone. Break a leg.
Tony, basically like Jack Buchanan in the curtain call scene in The Bandwagon, is how I always felt about that. Just overdone and sort of delightful. And now, of course, we come to what many people consider the crux of the entire show, the Cheese Man. And what is the meaning of the Cheese Man is the question that I've been asked by everybody, which to me indicates that we're doing something right, because he is the only thing that has no meaning, and I'll come back to him in a second. The red curtains many people associate with Twin Peaks, but in fact it was not a direct homage. The red curtains are a somewhat more literal image, again, of comfort and safety. The place where she feels safe, where she finds Tara between the red folds of the curtain. I'm not going to explain anymore because children might listen to this, but I was being kind of vaguely literal and sexual there. At the same time, the idea that, there's this space where there shouldn't be a space right next to where all this bustle is going on, to me is extraordinarily dreamlike. And in a moment we'll come back to the play and see what is, for me, a classically common experience. The play doesn't seem to have any resemblance to the actual play it's supposed to be, which is always the case when I dream about plays or anything like that. Again, images of womanhood and manhood and the very silly roles that they play sort of, come into play here. A salesman, he says, with such intensity. Although that's really just silly free associating, at the same time, it's sort of, playing gender roles. And that's why Giles, listened to Riley give the exact same answer as Harmony and, said that only he was right. It's all part of that how we perceive and who we listen to. This shot here, we had to use a Fraser lens, which gives you extreme depth of focus. They use them sometimes for the sniper scenes in Saving Private Ryan, and that way I could reach all the way up to the very front of the frame, have somebody really close, and have great depth in the background. And of course, Sarah, great at reciting these just insane long speeches, just rapid fire. She's got that old school kind of delivery, which I knew she could do better than anybody. And again, talking about maleness, that's a knife. So with the scary, because, show's got scary in it, and dreams are often bad.
Will.
And then, of course, coming out from the safety of the curtains into the classroom.
What did it look like?
I don't know. I don't know it's after me.
You must have done something.
No, I never do anything. I'm very
Willow
sorry.
protesting that
I
she's
just came to
not the
class.
sort of person who should be, in any kind of trouble. And now, of course, finally the reveal, the costume that she swears she's not wearing a costume.
Willow, everybody already knows.
And in order to get her to the look we're about to see, we obviously had to put a wig on her and dig up clothes like we had in the first episode so that we could get to Willow Year 1, or really Willow Episode 1, because, the network instantly said she's too square, change her clothes, so she became sort of hip and nerdy. That's sort of a little worst fear realized. Her two old lovers, who seemed to be very intimate, both of them staring at her and laughing at her. Fact is, when Allie put on the wig and had her old Year 1 hair on, everybody on the crew was all sentimental about it, and we just love her. We love old Willow. She was so cute. Not that new Willow isn't cute too, but Allie never felt very comfortable with this look. But then of course death and tearing and murder and all that stuff, and no one paying attention, because that's what happens when you get ripped up by a beast in a dream. Sucking the life out of her. Moving off Willow to young Xander.
I'm good. Did I miss anything?
Nothing much at all, really.
Learn from math scoring.
Now, here we played what is, for me, again, a classic dream thing. The movie I remember seeing and really liking as being long, strange, cheesy, and boring. That's why he mentioned Apocalypse Now earlier. And, of course, Giles says it's all about the journey. And that's particularly true in the case of this episode. It's the journey of life. It's the journey through these people's psyche. It's not about the reveal. We don't play it in the classical sense, although we have a mystery solved, a demon defeated, or a slayer defeated in this case. But we don't go the old-fashioned way. It's not about the twist. It's not about the end. It's just about the journey. You could say that about the show in general, but in this episode, we're very particular about it.
You don't need any help with that, right?
As much as possible, I wanted to follow people with steady cams, and Xander particularly, because he's going from place to place particularly a lot. The sexual dream about your friend's mom. I'm sorry to say, it happens. It happens to most of us, I hope. Besides, Christine is very lovely, and it makes perfect sense that Xander would have these thoughts, even if they were subconscious. You'll notice at one point here, she speaks. We see her. She's not speaking, but we hear her voice. That was deliberate to give it a dreamlike quality. Also, little slow motion shots like this in the middle of the cutting pattern. There were a couple of movies that I thought of a lot when I did this one, and the one I'd have to say came up the most was The Limey. The Limey has a lot of very sort of off-center cutting and dialogue where there's no dialogue, and that seemed to fit this style very much. It's particularly apparent in this scene. Soderbergh's whole sort of disjointed style worked really well here. And it was nice for Christine to get to play, just completely sexy, because when you play the mom on a show, you're sort of relegated to momhood. So it was nice to see that side of her. Anybody who hasn't had this dream, I'd be very surprised by. I think that's probably the best use of the initiative we had all year. We really wanted to get that big paranoid space, and nothing does that better than going to the bathroom in front of a bunch of people with clipboards. And now we find that the door leads to his basement, and of course that's going to become a recurring theme for Xander. The way Disguise was for Willow, the journey for Xander always seems to end up in the same place, and it's a place he doesn't want to be, partially because of a sense of failure, and partially because of something in there that frightens him. This was shot on our own back lot. We used a very wide lens and really widened out the sky to make it feel very, very like a huge space, even though, quite frankly, it's not.
Hey, there you are.
We made things as bright as possible, overly bright, so that they seem to flare a little bit. So we really got a very dreamy, outdoorsy sense. You'll notice Spike there in his tweedy suit.
Spike's like a son to me.
That's something we managed to pay off in episode 8 of season 6, where Spike actually puts on a suit like that and loses his memory and assumes he's Giles' son. So that was a fun little payoff that we got to make there.
You gotta have something.
Nikki seeing him, Xander. I get them confused. Xander seeing himself working the ice cream truck, a series of really bad jobs, guy with no future. Hence all roads leading to his basement.
Buffy, are you sure you want to
The sense of danger.
It's a pretty big sandbox.
I'm okay. It's not coming for me yet.
I just mean, you can't protect yourself from some stuff.
I'm way ahead of you, big
Another
brother.
thing I went for heavily here would be serious music cues over an entire lack of action or dialogue, just images, just really letting things sit. Not something you have an opportunity to do a lot in television. Just letting the images themselves take on meaning and resonance because they were just held so long. His own POV of himself. And that moves us into the next scene. My dream was to have shot this rear screen projection like the old days, like Vertigo or any of the great old movies where they're driving around a lot. Unfortunately, setting up a rear screen projection screen is really difficult on a stage, especially our tiny stages. And so instead we went with green screen, which looks a little more modern, but you still get that sense of incredibly fake traveling backgrounds, which is what I very much wanted. A sense of no movement where there should be the most sense of movement, a static feeling. This is Xander's dream, so what can I say? I make no apologies for this. This is how his mind works. The fact that he deals with most of the characters in the show sexually in some way or another is kind of a Xander thing. And in fact, we comment on it when he refers to himself as a conquistador because men are into conquest. And this is the kiss, the longest lesbian kiss on TV that they actually asked us to cut down his reaction shot. But we held it for as long as we could because we thought it was amusing to show the biggest kiss and not show anything. Just play it on his experience. But as I was saying, he refers to himself as a conquistador, and Joyce implies that perhaps what he's looking for is comfort, and he says, I'm also a comfortador, and that phrase comes up again. And what I was saying with that basically was the idea that Xander is looking for love, not just trying to get into the pants of every pretty girl that he's friends with, but really looking for something, some comfort, some love that he clearly is lacking from his mother and his family life. This, I wish, could only have gone on longer, but it's very important. The ice cream truck becomes yet again the basement, that Byzantine little space you have to go through to get right back where you started, which in Xander's case is what this is all about.
I know what's up there.
And of course, the cheese man. Again, the cheese man, meaningless. Why? Because I needed something in the show that was meaningless. Because there is always something in the dream that just doesn't make any sense at all. In this case, it was the cheese man. He confounds everybody because of that, and people ascribe him meaning. This, to me, means that we're being successful, because this means they're not worried about everything else, which means they sort of did understand most other things. I love the color scheme here. I love that we got to go to the very, very heavy greens and oranges. Again, I have to say Soderbergh in the limey, and a lot of his stuff, the underneath, that was a big factor. In some of this, although so was Apocalypse Now, because, you know, Xander not only incorporates
What?
watching the movie into his dream, but a scene from it, as we will see. Everybody speaking a different language. Everybody's ahead of him. Everybody is, you know, growing up, moving on, and he's stuck, and he doesn't understand why. He can't figure anything out. That's, again, part of his dilemma. This particular shot, taken directly from Apocalypse Now, when they turn Martin Sheen over right before he meets Marlon Brando. And this scene, we actually had Apocalypse Now on videotape and played it as much as possible, shot for shot. Gesture for gesture. The scene is sort of Apocalypse Now paraphrased, but at the same time it's all about Xander, and of course the idea that Kurtz would turn out to be Principal Snyder is a delight to me. And Armin came in, having been killed a year ago, just for this one scene, and he played it so beautifully. Not trying to do a Brando impression, not not being silly, not trying to do a pastiche. It's very common to incorporate, things we've seen into our dreams. And so he did a very realistic performance, but at the same time, he got all the nuance of the Kurtz character that Brando was playing. And so it's kind of a delight to
I never got
watch.
the chance to tell you how glad I was.
And he's hitting on the theme, basically, of Sanders not being worth much.
Where are you heading?
Well, I'm supposed to meet Tara and Willow.
Nicky himself said he never had more fun than when we shot this, ever. And I think part of it was going through this journey was so different for Xander. He got to be so many different people and in so many different situations, which he didn't often get.
Something I can't fight.
And this scene in particular was delightful for him. And he plays the terror and the hopelessness so well.
You're neither.
While still, playing the hero of the story, which, again, Xander doesn't often get to do.
A sacrificial stone.
I'm getting a cramp.
Now we get into the place where practicality and dreams come together, because knowing I had all these different sets stacked up against one another, so crowded because we shoot on this little warehouse that you basically would walk from one and you'd be in another. And that is such a dream experience that I said, well, let's use it to our advantage. And I went on to stage 3, where this is, figured out which things led to where, and gave us the sequence where Xander goes through all these different sets and ends up right back in the bedroom. I believe we shot this with a 17 lens. The closet here, obviously, Carrie Meyer, great production designer, built to get us the last leg of the journey, which is the basement once again. God damn it. Another of the movies that I studied was Eyes Wide Shut, which also has a similar kind of dreamlike quality to it. And I believe I read that Kubrick shot a lot of the walking through halls with a Steadicam on a 17 lens. So I did that a lot for Xander. particularly because, again, I wanted to get that sense of motion. I really wanted to. A wider lens lets you feel the environment around a person more. Walls rush by as opposed to just sort of being blurry in frame. And I think it's not too much. If you use a very wide angle, then it's clear you're just being wacky, and you might as well throw in ground fog and a frosted lens and really play dream sequence. Obviously, the evil father there, Nikki's home life, or rather, again, Xander's, a real problem, and the heart of his story, the heart of his misery. He can't get out of the basement. He can't stop being a Harris. That's his fear. He does, though, later.
Let it wash over you.
Don't you think it's a little old-fashioned?
This is the way women and men are behaved.
The way Giles talks to Buffy here is very mentory, but he also talks about men and women in relationships. It's got many aspects. The laugh, the giggle from Sarah, I just started making faces behind the camera unexpectedly to get her to laugh, because it's hard to just spontaneously laugh, so I unexpectedly acted like a complete idiot, and she broke up, so that worked out for us. Now, of course, Giles has become the father figure. His girlfriend is carrying a stroller, though it's empty. Sarah, Buffy, is his little girl in this sense. And, the whole world is a silly vampire carnival. I believe that's Brian Wonkum from Post doing the voice of the vampire. I had planned to do it, but he did it so well, we never recorded over it.
This is my business. It's blood of the lamb and all that. How are you going to get that all over your face?
Here we see Sarah with her face all muddied.
I know you.
And we'll see that again. We'll talk about that later, the primal Sarah. The crazy zoom, because you gotta have one. Now, black and white is something that gets used a lot, particularly in dream sequences. There's Fina crying in the background with the stroller, by the way. But I didn't want to use it for its own sake. It felt right. Spike is like, an old 30s movie villain, and he's playing it up, and he's playing it to the cameras, and he's such a showman, it makes perfect sense. Giles here, his biggest problem is that he can't decide who he wants to be. He can't decide, should he be going off and being a father and living a real life, what's going on. James never had more fun than when he did those poses. He cracked me up so hard. But, and this conflict, I wear the cheese, it does not wear me. Not many people figured out that was me making fun of a line from The Man in the Iron Mask, I wear the mask, it does not wear me, that Leonardo DiCaprio says. Now here's another example of sets that were just happened to be together. Spike's crypt was next to the bronze, so let's go there. And this coming up is one of my favorite sequences. Again, we just stuck Giles' living room in the bronze so that everything could be happening all at once. But this, again, highlights Giles' problem because, should I raise a family? Should I be a rock star? Or should I give the boring exposition in every episode of Buffy? And of course, we combined the two by having him get up and sing the exposition.
Okay.
Also, Anya as a stand-up comic just killed me. She seemed so perfect for it because her sense of humor is so off. Her humor comes from the fact that she doesn't understand our ways, let alone our jokes. So her being a comedian is kind of a funny concept to me.
Think of the facts, Willow.
And I love the way she's framed off-center.
Myself,
Something's after us.
Framing things just a little bit differently than your classic over two-shot is one of the joys of doing an episode like this. You can have an awkward framing, and it feels right.
To my ass.
For instance, there's a lot of space there that isn't being used, and the light is very stark, but that seems to work perfectly for that experience.
We must have some kind of explanation. If we don't know what we're fighting, I don't think we stand a chance.
It's strange.
There he goes. What I did basically was write a boring exposition dialogue thing. That's Chris Beck, the composer, and be with him for Star Mary, the band who played as Oz's band. Chris arranged what I wrote. I wrote down the speech, and having written it, I put it to music, very simply. And then Chris arranged it, and the band played it. And this was delightful fun for Tony to record and get to just kick it out. Obviously, this was a precursor to what the musical would eventually become because, I had such a good time writing this song. The two of them holding up the lighters was one of my favorite images. Hard to shoot this scene because Allison kept cracking up. Every time Tony got on stage to sing, she just started laughing, which was actually kind of delightful since we weren't yet behind that day. But the song doesn't pan out. And once again, we go into the small, hidden space that seems right belly up with the public place. Searching for something that we cannot quite untangle. I told you I was literal. The pocket watch brings him back to the idea of being the watcher. Brings him back to the idea of what he's supposed to be doing, and of course he figures it out. What she is, but it's too late. She still scalps him. And he makes reference to the fact you never had a watcher because he realizes she is the first slayer. And he begins to realize why it is she's attacking them. But unfortunately, this has to happen to him.
You never had a watcher.
That blood, just a little too thick. I had meant for it to go a little faster. I didn't actually reach his forehead until after the lines, so we just used the shot and then put the dubbed over the lines so that it seemed to work. The fact is, that was our last shot of the show.
In charge of these things.
So, and the last shot of the season, so it was
I need my beauty sleep.
a big
Stop it,
big
okay?
moment. Emotionally, anyway, because it meant we got to rest for a week and a half. Now, this scene has a nice little piece of trivia around it. Buffy's dream has a lot of references to Dawn and what's going to happen next year.
I thought you were gonna tell me.
Not something I usually do, but, we had made reference to her in the dream Buffy had at the end of the end of season 3, rather.
No.
So we made a lot of references to Dawn in this scene, and the idea that Tara would sort of be her spirit guide made sense because she didn't have that particular relationship with Tara, and Tara has a kind of good Wiccan mystical energy.
Here.
What's interesting, trivia-wise, about this scene is it is the first time mention was made of Dawn. It's also the time Michelle Trachtenberg actually came to visit the set. She had worked with Sarah before, and she was a big Buffy fan, and so she came to visit the set, and I met her that day. Sarah introduced us, and spent some time talking to her, and afterwards Sarah said to me, "You should get Michelle to read for the part of Dawn. She's just great." And so I think there's some fate going on there, the fact that she showed up the first time the character was ever mentioned and then went on to play her. This, we went with a slightly wider, distorted lens. And this, to me, is another of my favorite moments in the show. The idea that Mom lives behind the wall. Some people saw it as morbid, and although I knew Joyce was going to die in the next season, I didn't play it that way on purpose. It just seemed correct. I would say the other movie besides Eyes Wide Shut and The Limey that I would really have referenced for this is Orson Welles' version of Kafka's The Trial. A mouse is playing with my knees. Kafkaesque is, by its nature, dreamlike, and so somebody who's living in a wall just felt perfect for that sort of thing. And then, of course, she ignores her mother when she does ask for some help because she's off doing the next thing.
You're back?
I never left.
This was a great thing also, I think, for Mark, playing, sort of Buffy's fear of what he could be, the government sort of incarnate, the businessman, the suit, the evil corporate, CIA guy. This shows that their relationship is not entirely stable, that even though she loves him in her dream, he's someone who doesn't get her and doesn't walk in her world. Plus, we had that cool shot with the gun and the table. Very hard. This, obviously, is Adam, George Hertzberg, who had to play in heavy makeup for the run of the season. In this one instance, got to be himself. And he, too, has that clean-cut kind of, we are just two all-American guys, and all-American guys don't understand the very feminine mysticism of the Slayer. The government is all about right angles and white walls, and that's why the initiative failed. And that's why, and men playing at their games, we'd better build a fort. I'll get some pillows. Another of my favorite lines. Very much about, these guys are playing with their weapons. Sarah's actually moving back there. We put her on a little dolly and moved her backwards towards the demons, but it didn't really register when we showed it. The mud. This is where the idea is here that Buffy gets very primal. First of all, I'm looking for something and all I can find is gunk, but then her reaction to it is that she wants to be in it. She wants to crawl around in it. She becomes primal. Now, you'll notice that once again, here we went to a negative image, partially because it looks really interesting, and partially because the sequence came out a little less primal than we'd hoped. It looked more like she was giving herself a facial, so we wanted to do something to just make it seem strange. There, you see the side of her that is the primitive. Sarah really gives you the demon within, sort of, and Riley can't seem to handle that. Another one of our transitions. It's all about the journey, you see. Chris Beck making some very beautiful music here, and this shot, one of my favorites. Because we usually shoot in a tiny warehouse, and for once we could say pretty conclusively, no, look, we went somewhere. But the sense of isolation and grandeur that is the life of the Slayer, I think, is really embodied in that shot. Going out to the desert turned out to be an extraordinarily fun experience. Usually you think that long a hike for a location is going to be a pain, but actually it was great for the crew. We had a great time.
You're not in my dream.
And the look of the thing was unlike anything we'd shot.
Someone has to speak for her.
Again, framing things, off to the side and down a little bit. Just able to take some chances without the normal sort of sequence of events, and normal mise-en-scène, normal framing, and using the dissolves instead of cutting. It's all, anything goes in a dream as long as it doesn't feel like a trick. We Dutch the camera occasionally, we use wide angles occasionally, but every dream sequence, almost, that I've seen looked like some kind of trick, and my intent was to make something that was very naturalistic, but at the same time, very avant-garde. And as long as you're true to the emotion of the piece, then it works. And if it clashes with it, then it doesn't.
I am not alone.
And we learn the point of the thing, that the Slayer must be alone, must be a beast by itself, and Buffy just won't put up with that. That what separates her from other Slayers, what we learn, what's the key to her psyche is that she is not alone, that she has friends, that she has a life, that the side of her that is Buffy is what is as important as the side of her that is a Slayer. That is what, in fact, makes her the greatest Slayer there's ever been. And when she makes the poignant part about being alone, here comes the cheese man to say, okay, it's a dream, and Buffy's had enough of this. And she refuses to put up with it, even though the fight sequence was really cool looking. She seems to want no more of it. And down they go. This is one you can really only do once because they make a big mess when they go down. So we put all 3 cameras on it and got the most out of it that we could. So it was all a dream. Or was it? You know, the classic and inevitable double twist where with the killing and it's not a dream, but then Buffy really coming to the realization that she's had enough of this.
Are you quite finished? It's over, okay? I'm going to ignore you, and you're going to go away.
Some people found this to be somewhat anticlimactic. That was, of course, the point, that she defies the notion of climax, that she defies the notion of the tragic tale of the Slayer, and basically says, let's just put an end to this. And the more mundane it gets, the closer she gets to waking up, which actually makes perfect sense. So she's sort of saved everybody in that respect.
The first Slayer. Wow.
Not big with the socialization.
Or the floss.
Somehow our joining with Buffy and invoking the essence of the Slayer's power was an affront to the source of that power.
You know, you could have brought that up to us before we did it.
We end with, you know, a typical scene of order restored.
Yes, but you say that about chewing.
I had the same experience that I had on the musical with this. By the time I got to shooting a normal scene, I'd forgotten how to do it. And it was actually sort of very complicated to remember how to shoot just a bunch of people sitting at a table.
Yes, what Joyce?
Talking.
Buffy's mom.
Joyce and Xander's reaction to Joyce is, again, one of my favorite things.
Sure. Buffy's mom.
You all right?
Yeah. I think I might jump in the shower.
You seem a bit...
A little. The first Slayer. I never really thought about it. It was intense.
There's not really much, you know, more to say about this. Hence my prolonged silence. You know, we've gone through everybody's dream. We end with a little note of there is more to come. This is one of the years when I was pretty convinced we would actually be picked up for another year, so we left a lot of things hanging. But at the same time, I always felt if this was the last episode we ever filmed, it would be a good last one because it really did just get us into the minds of our characters whom I love very much and let them just sort of exist.
To come.
The thing that I love, knowing that half the people who saw this episode wouldn't respond to it, was that I was being true to the show, that whatever I wrote, whatever came out, whatever order it came out in, it was something that meant something to me. It was never a game. It was never just me having fun, although I almost never had more fun in my life.